don't take the tools that the Fillmores taught and actually apply them in my life. Wait a minute, Mike, you mean I actually have to apply these things that we learn here at Unity? Well, if you want to, right? If you want to, you can. But now what I have an understanding of is even in my own journey, my own unfoldment, is if I'm not careful, and I'm not doing my daily practices, and I'm not doing the things that I know I need to do to keep myself in alignment with my own divinity, then what happens is I get off track, and if something shows up, all of a sudden I start jumping to conclusions when I don't know all the facts. That's what happened. Anybody else go there occasionally? Okay, if you're not raising your hand, you might just want to check in with that. Just saying, right? Because I think we all do it, if you're honest with yourself. Right? So Reverend Jim Blake, in this week's e-news, there's an article that says, How Awareness Shifts Our Perceptions. And he goes on to talk about perception is loosely defined as the process of interpreting stimulus. However, interpretation of any stimulus is always accompanied by reference to our past experience. I'm going to say that again because there's a huge key in that. However, interpretation of any stimulus, you see something out there. All of a sudden what happens is things start to interact, and what it is it's because you're referencing your past experience. In other words, if you see a dog, you're going to have an experience because of your experience with dogs. If you see a little baby, you're probably going to have an experience just like it was when you looked at the little baby for the first time. In other words, every single one of your reactions, more often than not, especially when you're unconscious and unawake, is going to be based on a past experience. In other words, you're not even in the present moment. Really? Yeah, really. He goes on to say, for example, someone who's never seen an automobile would be unable to identify one. But a person who had seen an automobile before would be able to identify them easily, of course. Hence, perception may then be wholly defined as a process of interpreting a present stimulus based on past experience and has nothing to do with what's happening in the present moment. Think about that for a minute, and think about the implication of that. That means the majority of our life, if you're not careful, is being spent where? Right here, in the past. And every single time you have an experience with a person, place, thing, that what you're doing is you're going back and reliving it over and over and over and over and over again. But you're coming back here. You're not standing in the present moment and allowing it to be fresh and new and different and inspiring. Not only that, if you think about it, you're also holding any person, place, or thing to that same standard. So if somebody actually changes their life, but we know them as there's old Bob, and Bob is like A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, but now all of a sudden Bob has changed, guess what happens? By our own perception of Bob, which is from over here, we are literally holding that person right there. We literally are. Instead of standing here and allowing Bob to be who Bob really is, including maybe Bob changed. Anybody else struggle occasionally to see somebody and not start going yada, 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 yada about all the judgments and all the stuff that we think about a particular person? That's what this is talking about. So Blake in the article goes on to say, so now we have a working definition of perception. Let's discuss why it's meaningful to understand the part it plays in our daily experience. This next statement may be the most significant takeaway, he says. Based on the definition, everything that we witness, everything, and take it through our five senses, is filtered through our past experience. Everything. Think about how powerful that is. Think about knowing that now. Think about Well, am I really experiencing my life in the present moment, or am I experiencing it through this past lens and having it impact my reality? There's a difference, folks. There's a difference with the way that you live. There's a difference with the way that you show up. There's a difference with the way that you experience your reality. And every single moment of every single day, you are experiencing your life depending on which way you choose to see it. Because of who and what you are, and because of the power that you have. He goes on to say, why is this so important? Because sometimes our past experiences and conditioned perceived judgments, rushing to judgment, can lead us to misinterpret or misjudge present moment experiences. I guarantee you that mom was going back in her memory banks where something happened to her that wasn't very nice. Just like every one of you probably started going, oh, that little stinker. Instead of going, I don't know. Maybe I'll stay open and curious to find out, why is she taking a bite out of both the apples? Why is she doing that? But we don't. We always kind of gravitate over here, right? As I continue to integrate this practice of seeing everything through the eyes of innocence, I often find myself asking, how? How, God? How can I do this with everything that's going on around me? I mean, look at what's going on. We've got the pandemic. We got everything that's going on in the Ukraine. We've got social unrest, and on and on and on. And there's a part of me that's thinking, oh, so let me get this right, Mike. The world has never experienced anything like what's going on right now, right? And of course, I laugh at that. I think we've been through some pretty intense times before, and I'm sure there's going to be interesting times moving ahead, right? So then it comes back to, well, okay, how can I try to the best of my ability, how can I try to see the world through the eyes of innocence, to see everybody in my life through the eyes of innocence, to look at these things that are going on in the world and see them through the eyes of innocence? And as I went into prayer and meditation on that, the thing that came through loud and clear to me was, in order to see the world and everything through the eyes of innocence, guess where I have to start first? Right here. Start practicing with yourself first and seeing yourself through the eyes of innocence. And eventually you'll be able to shift everything and be able to look upon every single person, place, and thing through the eyes of innocence. So I started to think about that. Can I see myself through the eyes of innocence? Or more importantly, am I seeing myself through the eyes of innocence? Time for a gut check, folks. Time to sit there and ask myself, well, am I doing that? And the answer for me is real simple. Can I see myself through the eyes of innocence? At times I can. At times I genuinely can. At times I see when I've fallen in the past, when I've made a mistake, or when I've done something wrong, that I really was, as the old saying goes, doing the best I could with the awareness that I had. I genuinely can see it at times, and yet there are other times when I just simply can't. And that's when I'm really challenged, and I'm struggled in life, and I'm struggled with what's going on, and I'm not slowing down enough to really look at it. In other words, I'm doing 100 miles an hour in life because, as we know, life can have a tendency to grab our attention and get us distracted, if you will, get away from our spiritual practices, if you will, forget that these things are important to do on our own spiritual path, right? And then I started thinking about it. I said, well, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a way that I can tell There's got to be some type of a warning sign or something so I can start paying attention to it and figure out, okay, when am I doing it and when am I not? When am I seeing life, people, places, things through the eyes of innocence and when I am not? And all of a sudden, what came to my mind and the thought that came through was like, it's almost like what happens is when I'm able to see myself and others through the eyes of innocence is completely different than when I'm not able to be. It's almost like I'm seeing life in these situations through a different set of lenses. Let me explain that. For me, I can identify quicker when I'm not seeing through the eyes of innocence than when I am. Why? How can I tell when I'm not seeing through the eyes of innocence? Well, anytime I'm not seeing a person, place, or thing through the eyes of innocence, what am I doing? I'm usually projecting some kind of guilt, some type of shame, some type of blame, some type of anger, criticism, or rejection. That's normally what's happening when I'm not seeing the world through the eyes of innocence. And how can I tell when I'm seeing it through the eyes of innocence? It's pretty easy. Because anytime I'm seeing things through the eyes of innocence, what is there? Love, peace, forgiveness, grace, compassion, acceptance. I'm just kind of curious, does anybody notice a little bit of a difference between the different lenses? Just a little bit? Yeah, just a little bit, right? Same situation, and yet, given the circumstances or what's going on, I'm using a completely different set of lenses. In one case, when I'm using guilt, shame, blame, criticism, rejection, I want you to understand that what you're doing is you're using the ego's lens. The ego is so quick to judge, blame, shame, guilt, all those things. The ego's lenses do that. In the other case, when I use love, grace, compassion, forgiveness, acceptance, I want you to understand that you are seeing it through the eyes of the Christ, the indwelling Christ. The things that the Fillmores taught us, the things that Jesus and other masters have taught us. We're seeing and perceiving through the eyes of the Christ. In one, we're seeing through the eyes of the ego, and the other one, we're seeing through the eyes of the Christ. Don't complicate it. It's really that simple. And what I want you to understand and take away from this is that you have a choice in terms of which lenses you decide to use and how you perceive a situation. It is a choice. But we just have never been taught that or told it. We've been taught that we didn't have a choice, that we only had one thing, that if we're a victim, then we have a tendency to use the lenses of the ego. But when we step over here, if you will, what happens is we actually get to step into our power and become a powerful co-creator with the divine, and when we do that, we get to see through the eyes of the Christ, right? In Buddhism, there's a belief that we're in one state of being or the other. We're either in a beautiful state or we're in a suffering state. And that when you're in a beautiful state, we are wide open to love, to forgiveness, to everything else, and everything that we want to experience is when we're in a beautiful state. When we're in a suffering state, it's just the opposite. In other words, we don't get love, we don't get compassion, we don't get all that. Actually, we get just the opposite of all of that. I always say that when I'm in a suffering state, I feel really, really, really small, and I don't have very many choices, and generally those choices I have aren't very good. And when I'm in a beautiful state, I am wide open. There are limitless choices I have, and I just get to choose because I'm a powerful co-creator with God, and when I'm in a powerful state, I realize that and I remember it, right? I think there's a little bit of gray. With Buddhism, they say you can't be in both at the same time. You're either in a beautiful state or a suffering state. They say that there's no black and white, and I kind of think there might be a little bit of gray, but that's my own personal experience, right? So you think about it, in any given moment, you're presented with an opportunity to either A, see a person, place, or thing through the lens of innocence or through the eyes of your own indwelling Christ, or you can choose to see a person, place, and thing through the lens of the ego. And depending on which lens you use, will impact your state of being. What? How does it impact your state of being? Well, it's simple. When you use the ego's lens, how do you feel? Anger, upset, depressed, exhausted, frustrated, all of those things when you're seeing through the lens of the ego. And you wind up with the dreaded emotional hangover. Anybody ever have an emotional hangover? Let me explain it. An emotional hangover is when you react in a particular situation that isn't maybe your proudest moment, and then you sit there and beat yourself up because of the way that you reacted or responded, and therefore you get this emotional hangover. Why did I do that? Why did I say this? Blah, 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 blah. That's what I call the emotional hangover. Anybody ever have an emotional hangover? Just curious. Yeah, right? And the thing that's amazing is when I use my Christ lens to see something, how do I feel? I feel good. I feel peaceful. I feel calm. I feel joyful. All of those things that we want. Again, when we're in a beautiful state, we're experiencing all the things that we want to experience. And guess what? There's no emotional hangover. Right? There's no emotional hangover. The point of all of this is just to say that depending on which lens that you choose is going to determine your state of being. That is going to have a direct impact on the way that you live and are living your life. And guess what? You have a choice. You have a choice because of who and what you are, which is an amazing, powerful, incredible expression of the divine. So you do have a choice to be in a beautiful state or a suffering state. And guess what? There is nobody that is going to judge you for choosing either one. You're not judged for it. It's just you may have a reaction that you may not prefer if you choose to see things through the lens of the ego. So what I'm starting to realize more and more is that it's kind of easy to talk about this stuff when things are going easy. But when things aren't going so easy, that's really where stuff starts to come up, right? So in other words, yeah, we can sit there and talk all these wonderful, thoughtful, fluffy thoughts and everything else like that. But when stuff starts going crazy, that's where it really comes down to, okay, am I still able to do this in those difficult times I'm having in my days, my weeks, my months, my years, my life? And so what I want to share with you is just a little bit of a process that I've been using that will help me when stuff comes up. So in other words, again, we all have a spiritual tool belt. We all have spiritual tools, especially if we're here at Unity. And you can use your spiritual tools in your spiritual tool belt. That's the whole point. Otherwise, all we're here doing is for entertainment purposes. So the question is, do you want to be entertained, or do you actually want to use the spiritual tools that we talk about and were taught to us by the Fillmores and Jesus and so many others, right? So first of all, the thing that I'm going to start doing is paying attention to how I'm feeling. Why? Well, I just explained it. If I find myself in a suffering state, or I find myself upset, angry, mad, A, B, C, D, E, F, or G, what lens am I looking through? Probably my ego. Probably, right? And if I realize that, I'm not going to make it worse by sitting there judging myself. I'm just going to start paying attention. Hey, Mike, tap on the shoulder. Hey, dude, you might want to pay attention. You might be seeing everything through the eyes of the ego, and I'm not so sure you want to go there. Remember, you don't like hangovers. Any kind of a hangover I don't like. So you might want to start paying attention. Oh, okay. Pay attention. How do I pay attention? What's the first indication? How do I feel? When I'm not feeling really great and there's some kind of an emotional upset, I start really paying attention. What is going on here? And then what do? I simply forgive myself. Like, hey, it's okay, I'm human. I don't judge myself for having a human experience. I mean, I am here on this third dimensional reality and stuff's coming up. In the same breath, I'm also not ignoring what's going on out there. I'm not living this Pollyanna life where I'm just ignoring everything that's going on out there. I know everything that's going on right there, right now. I'm not ignoring it. I'm not spiritually bypassing. We don't do that here, right? In that moment when all of a sudden I realize I'm seeing it through that lens of the ego, what I do is I simply forgive myself for doing it, and then what do? I make another choice. I choose to do something different. Wait a minute, you mean I can change what I'm doing right now? I can change the way that I'm perceiving this right now? Yeah. And so what I do is I make a decision to make a different lens, to use a different lens, to look at this thing differently. And to the best of my ability, what I try to do, minimally, like, look, if it's a little bump in the road, I can transition pretty quickly and get back on track, so to speak. But with the tougher things, what I notice is even if I can just get to neutral, even if I can just get to the point to where it's like, I'm okay with it, and I'm not freaking out, and wah. If I can just get to the point to where I can just look at something and just go, listen, this is what it is. I may not fully understand it in this moment. In fact, it might even frustrate me, but it's okay. I can still choose to see this through the lens of the indwelling Christ. So a worst case scenario, I'll remind myself, listen, just get back to neutral. Just, come on, just a little effort here. Can you at least get back into neutral? So how do I do that? It's really simple. I make a new decision. I now choose to see this through the eyes of the Christ. Wait a minute, Mike, is it really that simple? Oh my God. Yes. Your intention and your words are everything. It's everything. It's who and what you are. It's how you're creating your reality. Whether you choose to accept that or not is okay. But I'm just telling you, when you step fully into your power, you'll realize that your intentions and what you say impact what's happening in your own reality. So I just say, it's now time. I choose to see this through the eyes of the Christ. Well, there's a concept. Never thought of that one before. So, for example, I'll choose love instead of hate. I'll choose forgiveness instead of judgment. I'll choose grace instead of condemnation. However you choose, whatever words you choose, make them your words. Whatever you want to do. Make a decision to use a different set of lenses, and then sit down, go into prayer, go into meditation, take a minute, and when you can, reconnect and remind yourself. Forgive yourself if you need to forgive yourself. Because we're all part of this human experience, right? When I do this, it feels to me like if I've nailed it and do it well, I get peace. Like I said, my minimum goal is to get to neutral without judgment. And so what I'd like to do is I would like to practice with you for just a moment. So if we could get a little bit of music, maybe dim the lights just a little bit. Get yourself in a comfortable position. and just come into your quiet place. For me, it helps to put my hand over my heart. If that helps you, fantastic. If not, that's okay too. But just become still. Tell your brain it's time to take a little bit of a break. Tell your body it can relax too as you go into the silence. And as you slowly start to relax, I just want you to imagine something that's been going on in your life that you've been having a hard time accepting. It could be a person, a place, a thing. Think of something. And just allow yourself to have the feelings, whatever the feelings are. Don't judge yourself. There's no shame, there's no blame, there's no guilt here. We don't do that here. This is just an experience, folks. That's all it is. And having that experience of feeling what it feels like, if there's any kind of an emotional upset or there's something that's grabbing your attention and there's a part of you that's going, hey, wait a minute, wait. No. And now I just want you to tell yourself, it's okay that I see it through this lens, if you will. You're doing the best that you can. But tell yourself that there's another choice to be made. If you want, you don't have to. But if you want, there is another choice. I want you to tell yourself that you're choosing to see this through the eyes of the Christ, your own indwelling Christ instead. Instead of thinking about this person, place, or thing through judgment, condemnation, rejection, hate, that instead you're going to see it through the eyes of the Christ, even if you don't understand it fully. Dear Spirit, please let me see this through the eyes of the Christ. Remove the veil. Remove the judgment, the criticism, the shame, the blame, the guilt. Remove them. And instead, let me stand in my own divinity and see this through the eyes of the Christ. And if I need to forgive, I can forgive. And even in a stretch, I can understand somehow, someplace, this is there for me to help me on my own path. Whether it's an individual path or a collective path, there's a lesson for me. And to the best of my ability, I'm going to continue to focus on love, light, forgiveness, acceptance, even if I don't understand it. And even if it takes a minute to figure this out. In other words, you don't have to do it perfectly every single time, especially when you first start. But be willing and be open to access this part of yourself that has the ability to see this through the eyes of the Christ. And just spend a moment and see if it feels different. See if something hasn't shifted. It's okay if it didn't, but maybe it did. Maybe there's a lesson in here for you. What could that be? There's so much more we will get out of this situation if we don't rush to judgment. And maybe a final prayer would be, just open my eyes, God. Help me see what I'm not seeing. Help me express what I'm not expressing. Help me forgive what I'm not forgiving. And now just imagine letting it go into the hands of God. Blessing it, thanking it, and letting it go. And then slowly start to come back into this room, back into your body. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. How was that? A little bit different? A little bit, energy-wise, a little bit different? I hope so. These teachings, these tools that we've been given are to help us, to assist us, so that we can live the way that we want to live. And if we want to live in peace, and we want to live in harmony, and we want to live in joy, we have the ability to do that. But I've got some, well, for some people, good news. It's not going to happen to you, it's going to happen through you. Which means that you can't sit there and not engage in this process. If there's anything I've learned in all this time I've spent at Unity, it's engagement, engagement, engagement. Experience it. It's great to talk about this stuff. It's great to learn about it. But if we're not actually taking these tools and applying them to our lives, then what's the point? Seriously, what's the point? And again, there's no judgment there. None. If that's what makes you happy, then that's what makes you happy. But for me personally, on my own journey, on my own awakening, it's about taking these tools and then making a difference in my life. And so, I really hope that was helpful for you. I really hope you can take away from this talk another tool that you can use when all of a sudden you find yourself, I don't know, reading a newspaper or turning on a television set and seeing somebody's face or hear him talk about a particular political party or. You've got tools where you can stay centered and connected and shine the brilliant light that you are. It's just going to take a little time and a little bit of practice. You are all doing an amazing job. Whether you're here or you're online, you're doing good work. You are. You're doing it in your own way, which is really quite beautiful and profound. And I always say this, that I'm the luckiest guy on earth because I get to share these experiences with each and every one of you. And I'm incredibly grateful for that. And so I send to you my love, my blessings, and I behold that Christ Spirit in each and every one of you. I just ask that you consider doing the same within yourself. Every morning, look in the mirror and remind yourself who and what you are, which is a beautiful expression, a unique expression of the divine that only came here one time. You're it. What a gift you are. God bless and thank you.